Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Night Wars. It is May 13th, 1996, and we are live with WCW Nitro at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. I am Scott, and as always, Joseph Rojas is in the building. Joseph, how are you?
I'm good. Is Mach in the building? I don't think Mach is in the building, or at least they're trying to not let him
We'll
be in the
get there.
building.
We will get there, sir. Let's get into it, though, because you're right. There's a lot of drama here on Nitro. First of all, Lex Luger camped out because he didn't want to miss the show, and I like Goofy Lex, and this was pleasing to me. Did you enjoy that Lex camped out?
This was probably my single favorite moment of the show, and it lasted 2 seconds. And that's not downgrading the show. It's a pretty decent show, but Lex camping out to ensure he gets the number one contender shot for the Giants title was hilarious. He's got a lawn chair, he's got a sleeping bag, he brought a flashlight so he can read, and a cooler next to him for his drinks and food. My God, I loved it.
This Lex is peak Lex. If this was just Lex Luger, he would be one of the greatest of all time. He should have just done this his whole career. We would have been all about it. But after that, we got our first match. We got the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, versus the Public Enemy, Johnny Grunge, Rocco Rock. It's actually a pretty straightforward match, which is a little surprising considering it's a Public Enemy match. But the Frankensteiner for the Steiners for the win. 6 minutes, 55 seconds. Joseph, did you have any particular thoughts about this one?
Yeah, you're not wrong, which my wife loves to point out when I say that on the podcast. That's her new thing, is every time I say you're not wrong, she turns to me and says, you're not wrong. It is a very straightforward match, and it is, again, surprising because it is Public Enemy. Scott Steiner moves Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge around like it's nothing, and it's incredibly impressive. Scott Steiner has ridiculous muscles that are absolutely 100% real and not from any sort of substance, wink. But it is actually impressive how strong this man is, especially at this age in his career. But it is a very simple match with the right outcome. At one point, Bischoff says WCW has the best tag team wrestling on the planet. I would say he's right. And we're going to see that not just this week. We're going to see it in the pay-per-view, and we're going to see it next week as well.
You're not wrong, Joseph. WCW does have the best tag team wrestling in the world right now. So take that, everybody.
Everybody, or one specific person.
You know, I'm just saying. I'm not singling anyone out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you're right, you're right. And that's all I got to say about that. After that match, though, we got another banger match. We got Chris Benoit versus Squire David Taylor. Jeeves is there as well. Of note, during the match, Bischoff tells us that the Belfast Bruiser, he's gone back to Ireland, so he won't be at Slamboree. Told us last week, he's reminding us again. The real background is that Fit Finlay was injured and he had to take some time off. He's gone for the rest of 1996. He only comes back, I think, in late 1997. And by that time, he's jettisoned the Belfast Bruiser gimmick and just comes back as Fit Finlay, which we prefer. So I think that's okay with me. But if you couldn't guess, Chris Benoit wins this one. He beats Squire Dave Taylor in 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Joseph, give me the blow-by-blow, man.
Is this the first time we've seen Dave Taylor on Nitro? I know he'll be a fixture for at least the next year, but I feel like it's the first time he's been at least on the Nitro program. He's probably been on Saturday Night a few times. Bischoff in this match mentions that Hulk Hogan is at home watching his good friend Shaq and the Orlando Magic, because this is during the playoffs. And so if you'll notice at the very end of each Nitro, they'll do like a segue into the playoffs. Nitro during the next few weeks kind of has its time slot moving around because TNT prioritizes the NBA playoffs, which they should. They're a huge draw for viewers, so it makes perfect sense. And so he mentions this thing. This is actually the last year Shaq would play for Orlando, and then he would go to the Lakers. Bischoff talks about a mysterious benefactor who's supporting DDP, and that he is back in the WCW, which will lead directly into the pay-per-view. This will be a big running line going into the pay-per-view. That's cool, I guess. It's a kind of an odd way to bring him back in. but he's gonna get a kind of a nice little push. So that's pretty cool too. Mongo finds out Mach is outside the arena and goes to talk to him. And then Benoit wins this match. And I know you asked for the blow by blow, and all I mentioned was commentary, but that's kind of the problem with this match. This match got a C from me. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the in-ring action, but commentary does not talk about this match even remotely. All they do is talk about other things, and it really kind of lowers the standing of this match for me. It's really difficult to kind of pay attention to what's going on because you have to pay attention to the playoffs, the DDP storyline, the Mach storyline. Mach and Flair, that's a huge thing. Also, the fact that Mongo's now kind of getting into it with Flair too. So you're paying attention to all these other things and never the in-ring action. And this is kind of a recurring problem that WCW's been having lately. And it'll make it work really well in a few weeks when a situation happens that we're so close to, and I can't wait to talk about, that really does dominate WCW. So you need to talk about it kind of every match. But with this, I really feel like you just kind of threw these two guys in here and then just talked about literally anything else but this. So it definitely hurt the match for me.
You know what, Joseph?
What's that, Scott?
You're absolutely right.
Oof.
Because we go to Mean Gene, who's standing outside. You mentioned this already, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. Macho Man has been banned from entering the building, and the crack WCW security is just a wall of force. He tries to get through, and he can't. Mach, who I've seen destroy anybody and everybody, cannot get through this WCW security. This is a good security team, I tell you. But Mongo comes out, and he says he's got a plan. Ooh, what could this be? Gene thinks Macho needs help, and Macho says a line in this that I laughed out loud about. Hopefully you wrote it down, because I'm expecting you to do it in the voice.
I think I did write it down. Was it by chance? I saw a psychiatrist. She said I had OCD. One cool dude. Was it that one?
It was not that one, but that's a good one too.
Was it? You ain't seen crazy. I'll talk to you in another lifetime. Not this one.
That's another good one, but
really?
No,
it wasn't either of those.
It was about how he's gonna drag a dead partner around Slamboree.
I didn't write that one down.
Well, as you know, we have the Lethal Lottery where they're pairing enemies with each other in tag team matches. And Macho Man and Ric Flair are going to be at a tag team in Slamboree. And he said he's perfectly fine dragging a dead partner around Slamboree. And I laughed out loud because the man's lost it. He's crazed.
Crazy Mach is the best Mach, in my opinion.
You know, we're firing all cylinders. We got Goofy Lex. We got Crazy Mach. It's a good time to be alive in the WCW.
And he's wearing a great black gear with silver lightning all over it.
Ooh.
It's so good. That itself got an A for me. One thing I did notice during this segment is for some reason the audio on this show is really bad. Like they are crackling all over the place. And at first I had to check if like, is it my speakers? No, it's actually this episode. They really struggle with the mic that Mean Gene has. Commentary struggling too. Whatever's going on in their sound system is just fucking up.
Yeah, I mean they just need to get some LCD in their sound system. Is that?
I don't think that applies to this situation.
Oh, it doesn't. No. I mean, they'd be banging if they did though. Anyways, we need to move on because my joke landed flatter than Glacier's debut in WCW, which doesn't happen yet. But we get another Glacier promo. Blood runs cold, Joseph. How exciting. Are you excited for Glacier?
I was incredibly excited for that beautiful transition you just pulled off. I like that a lot.
As I've said many times, I liked Glacier as a kid, but rewatching this, how long they dragged out his debut because of the NWO just absolutely catching fire, you know, and they would melt Glacier. So it's just a real issue. You can't, you got to keep them apart. And
are you saying NWO caused global warming? I'm
saying they could be a factor.
Interesting.
We got to look into it. But when he debuts, it is so clear. It's so wrong and it's so bad. And I feel so bad for him because I think he's fun, but it was not the right time, even 6 months after the fact, because they dragged this thing out for months. But yeah, there's another Glacier promo, and we're going to see a lot more of them for I'm serious, 6 months. God help us. But what God doesn't need to help with is Ric Flair, because he is God's chosen wrestler. And Ric Flair
I
has a
gotta
match.
cut you off right there. I think Ric Flair
What?
might be the one guy God does need help with. Jesus Christ, this guy at least once a year is in the news for something just ridiculously stupid, like him being super drunk the other day and losing it in a pizzeria.
What are you talking about? That's Ric Flair. That's the brand, baby. Rolex wearing, private jet flying, limousine driving, styling and profiling. Ric Flair, man. I'm okay with all of it. I love that Ric Flair's gimmick basically gives him a pass to do everything because it's like, no, that's Ric Flair.
Yeah, but now it's that thing where it's like he's super old, so now it's just depressing, and you're like, "How has this guy survived this long?"
I will tell you, I watched Iron Claw last night and they have a Ric Flair in it. And he does a promo. And I was like, man, Ric Flair would have done that better. I was disappointed. Like, that was a letdown for me. Because he does the Ric Flair promo about the limousine, the longest limousine in the world, and all that kind of stuff. It's just, but he just doesn't sell it like Ric Flair sells it, and I was very disappointed. Whatever. Anyways, let's get to the match. We got Ric Flair. We got VK Wall Street. What? Your main event or your headliner against VK Wall Street. All right, whatever. Let's do it. Flair will sell for anyone, even a mid-carder like VK Wall Street. He sells all over the place for this guy in this match. But Ric Flair's got to win, right? And he does. 6 minutes, 23 seconds. Ric Flair is the winner. After the match, Mean Gene talks to Rick and the ladies of Space Mountain at the VIP table, because Ric Flair has a VIP table now. He responds to the Macho Man, saying Macho's going to drag his dead body all across the ring by kissing all up on Miss Elizabeth, which made me a little uncomfortable. But more importantly, he addresses Mongo. And Ric Flair, if you didn't know, is Joe Namath. And while Mongo was rolling in the dirt, Rick was throwing touchdowns and staying up all night long, Joseph. What'd you think?
I mean, it's a great Ric Flair promo. The match itself is a very solid match, like you said. VK Wall Street does give it his all in defeat. And you mentioned that Flair will sell for everybody. That's totally true. But I do think with someone like VK Wall Street, who's been in the business for so long, Flair's known him probably since the start of his career and watched him in all the different, whether it was tag teams to different gimmicks, and wrestled him all over the place. I'm sure that makes it easy for Ric Flair to be able to kind of trust a guy and be like, hey, I'm gonna make you look good tonight. Because I think VK Wall Street looked fantastic. So that match got a B for me. The promo got an A. It's Ric Flair being ridiculous, which is the best kind of Ric Flair. The Joe Namath thing. This is like the 7th time he's referenced Joe Namath. He clearly likes Joe Namath. Was it Joe Namath or Joe Montana?
In my notes, I have Joe Namath, and that's who he's done before. I may have gotten it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Joe Namath. That's who he usually says.
Joe Namath, by the way, the most overrated quarterback in NFL history. Anyways, but it's a great promo from Ric Flair. And the Joe Namath, if you want to call it a character, because it's not really a character, that's who he was, does kind of line up pretty well with Ric Flair as a person in the sense that
Broadway Joe.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely partying every single night. As far as throwing touchdowns, honestly, not that many. He was, he's kind of an average quarterback at best. Anyways,
send Joseph your letters, New York Jets fans.
They don't know how to read or write.
It's like the King of the Hill meme. Those kids would be very upset if they could read.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to get even more letters from the New York Jets fans now. They may be in crayon, but it is what it is. I'm kidding. I have some of your players on my fantasy league. I hope you do very well, New York Jets football team. After that, we got the main event, Joseph. We got the Giant, and we got Lex Luger for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Lex did not miss it. The early bird catches the worm here, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, he loses, but, well, he doesn't technically lose, but he doesn't get the title. But he still got the match, and that's really all we ask for. Of note, though, no one gets a damn entrance. Not even the champion. What is going on? There's a lot of no selling from the Giant. They take it outside, and Giant choke slams Luger through the VIP table. There's a double count out. Sting and Jimmy Hart try to break it up, and Gene wants a word, but Sting tells him to leave. It's bad. Luger's in a bad way. And that's how we end it. It looks bad, Joseph, and we're off to Slamboree. 4-minute, 5-second match, disqualification, double count out. What do you think?
I actually thoroughly enjoyed this. It got a B minus for me. It's obviously only a 4-minute match, like you said. Overall, though, I'm fine with the outcome of it. From just a sheer spectacle standpoint, it's a lot of fun. Specifically, the fact that Giant choke slams Luger through the table, and it leads to what it leads to, right? And then you have the Sting coming out stuff. I do kind of wish Giant didn't spend all that time clearing the table before choke slamming Luger through it, because it would have been really cool to just see the choke slam and just food just go into the air, and that would have been awesome. But whatever, it's Giant's kind of green. I don't think he was thinking about that too much, or maybe he was just like, "Hey, some of this stuff might hurt Luger, so I want to protect him." I don't know.
Good guy,
Yeah,
Giant. Good guy,
you
Giant.
mentioned real quickly, you mentioned that they didn't get entrances, and I was thinking about that too. And I'm going to assume it's probably because they are preceding the NBA playoffs. So TNT probably told them, you have a very specific window you cannot go over. We have to get to the playoffs. So they probably went, just get them out to the ring. We don't have enough time, especially because Flair did cut a promo right before this. I'm sure he probably took a little bit of extra time because he is Ric Flair and he deserves so. But I'm sure they really had to be like pinpoint accuracy with their timing on this particular episode and probably the next few weeks. Sting, like you said, comes out to try to kind of protect Lex Luger after the choke slam. He really wants to make sure Giant doesn't keep attacking him. And the crowd is one of the best parts of this. The Sting and the crowd, I think, add to this perfectly. The crowd is stunned by this choke slam. When we watch this stuff nowadays, it's pretty mundane. But in 1996, this really wasn't, right? This is devastating. And they were pretty behind Lex Luger. They've definitely taken a liking to him. So seeing him motionless on the ground and then Sting coming out to try to, see if he's okay, and Gene, like you said, Mean Gene comes over and Sting is screaming at him, "Not now, Gene, not now." It all just adds to it. This crowd is stunned. They're absolutely stunned. And it does a really cool end to this show. And this is the go home show, right? Into Slamboree. I think this is a perfect way to end an episode going into your pay-per-view, because the pay-per-view main event is Sting versus Giant, and you basically just took out Sting's best friend. Now it adds to their little rivalry, which they haven't really had a rivalry going into this. This is kind of the only booking that's really happened, but it does add to it, which is nice.
You know what isn't nice, though, Joseph?
What's that, Scott?
This turd we got up next at WWF Raw. It's actually not that.
Yeah, I'm
I
trying
mean,
to think about it. Is it that bad?
there's one good match that kind of makes up for all the others. But let's stop speculating and let's get into it. Again, it's May 13th, 1996, but now we're in Sioux City, Iowa, and we are with the WWF Raw. Up first is Ahmed Johnson versus Zip of Skip and Zip, the Body Donnas. Out with Zip is Skip and Sonny. Ahmed Johnson does what Ahmed Johnson does. He destroys them. The Body Donnas switch places because, they look so much alike, and that still doesn't do anything. Ahmed Johnson still destroys them. He effectively just single-handedly won the tag team titles. Joseph, what'd you think of this? Because I didn't think it was all that great.
You're not wrong. It's bad. Before this, though, Jim Ross does interview Ahmed Johnson, and he asks him about people trying to stop him. Ahmed Johnson says something along the lines of, Jim, Jeff Jarrett's guitar didn't stop me. Davey Boy Smith's table didn't stop me. And then he kind of rambles. I don't know what he says after that because it's really hard to actually understand him. And then Sonny comes up to him and she kind of flirts with him a little bit, trying to get him off of his game, And he says to this actually I did like. I thought this was pretty well done. He says, Sonny, I've read all about you being one of the top 10 most beautiful women, but I don't mess with poison. And my mama always told me, take trash out, don't bring it in. That was a pretty good line. I enjoyed that. Ahmed almost dropped Zip right on his head when they had this match. And it was a little scary, especially because Zip really did, get his bell rung like a week or two ago. So that was like, oh, geez. And they record these in batches, much like we do. And I was like, this dude's probably not the guy who should be taking a shot to his head right now. So that was pretty scary. Skip and Zip, like you mentioned, they do switch roles because they look nothing alike, which makes the ref not notice them. Which yeah, what's going on there? And again, all my notes kind of line up perfectly with yours. Essentially, Ahmed Johnson disposed of both of the tag team champions. He doesn't win the titles like you insinuated. These weren't for the titles, but
He should, though.
it does.
He just won.
I was gonna say though, it does completely devalue the titles. I mean, you've basically just said these tag team championships don't mean jack shit because one guy can beat both of these guys at the same time. That's not good. It got a D for me. I did not enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, Ahmed's not even on his A game. I mean, he's pretty damn far from okay. If you're a new listener, that's a callback to when I said Ahmed Johnson should just be Marcellus Wallace from Pulp Fiction. And I'm right. You made a great point about the pre-match segment, which I completely neglected to mention, but do have it in my notes. I did know that Sonny puts oil on Ahmed's chest for him, and he calls her trash. I thought that was amusing. I'm not a huge Sonny fan, but I thought that segment worked because it wasn't just totally about Sonny just being pretty. There was a little bit more to it. What I didn't like, though, is Warrior University, because up next we got a promo with the Warrior dressed like a normal person, or at least as normal as the Warrior can dress, talking about his Warrior University, Joseph. They're hyping this Warrior University. It's a wrestling training school, which this must have been part of his deal to return, that he got to hype his school. I don't even know if WWF's involved. I looked it up. I don't think a single person ever graduated from it. I think it folded as soon as Warrior got kicked out of WWF, which were weeks, if not days from happening. And I know you love the Warrior, so I thought I would take a moment to ask you if you had any thoughts about the Warrior University.
Got a D for me. But you know, when I'm thinking I really want to learn how to be a wrestler, the number one person I'm going to run to is the Ultimate Warrior to teach me how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you just no sell, and then you kind of you shake the ropes a lot, and you run around, and you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got it.
I don't.
All right.
I mean, look, I will say on WWF's perspective, I do appreciate the fact that if this was important and they said, you know what, we'll help with that and we'll make this a thing, that's honestly fine. But I think this may be the last time that we see Warrior on the. Oh wait, no, because he's got to have a run in with Jerry for a bit. But we're getting pretty close to Warrior being gone for sure. I don't know. The whole thing's a mess. It is what it is. Let's just move on.
A lot of people like the Ultimate Warrior, and I'm sure we're pissing off a segment of our listeners by continually trashing the Warrior. I mean,
All
at
those
least you
people
can
are wrong. It's just that simple.
And you know what? Joseph? You're absolutely right.
Appreciate you. Look, I get that like wrestling is opinion based, right? From a fan perspective, I totally understand that, right? Like I'm not a Bret Hart guy, you know that about me, but I can appreciate Bret Hart. I can appreciate the fact that people like that's one of their a lot of people that's their number one guy. I'm okay with that, right? There is a great argument for that. There is no good argument for Ultimate Warrior. There isn't. He was never good. The best thing about him was he had a very unique look for sure, but he was basically a shitty version of Sting and he was not a great person. So all things considered, nah.
And it's very surprising that you don't like Bret Hart, considering that your favorite wrestler of all time, Charles Malcolm Punk, loves Bret Hart.
That's not my favorite wrestler of all time.
Your second favorite wrestler of all time.
You put some respect on Shawn Michaels' name, God damn it.
That's true. That's true. But I can't do with Shawn Michaels' name what I just did with CM Punk's name, unfortunately, because Shawn isn't short for anything. So
he's short for a wrestler.
I can't do it.
Hey-o!
Oh, Shawn's never coming on the show now.
No, that was a big thing in his career. That was a big thing that people gave him crap about, was that he was, too short to make it, and then he proved them all wrong.
Yeah, man. He's a great wrestler. I'm not going to say he's not. He is one of the greatest of all time for sure, even at his short stature. But, big things come in small packages sometimes. Anyways, what isn't a small package is the man they call Vader.
Oh, I like that. That was good.
That was off the dome, bro. That was off the dome. Vader up against Duke DeRosie. Vader, accompanied by Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette gets on the commentary table. We like some Jim Cornette on the mic, so that's nothing to poo-poo. I will say, though, Duke DeRozzi puts up a pretty good fight for a bit here, but he loses because, of course, he does. Vader has to win. Vader defeats Duke DeRozzi. But this does beg a question for me. What is Vader's arc when even a jobber can give him a run for his money? What are we doing? I think this is something you and I have talked about quite a bit here about what is Vader's job here? What's his storyline? And this is just another example of that.
See, this is the problem with the way that you and I think. What we really need is one of those Warrior fans to be on this podcast to just have awful takes that we can go back and forth with. Because my my first note here is Dumpster gets way more offense than I expected. And again, you're not wrong. It's very strange. I did have a little fun game that I'm gonna throw to you, Scott. This is a game just for you. I'm calling it Jim or Jerry. I'm gonna give you 2 quotes from the commentary booth, and you have to tell me if they're Jim or Jerry. Are you ready?
I like this new segment. Go for it.
Okay. Quote number 1. It's gonna be 2 tanks meeting. Vader's a Sherman tank and Yokozuna's a septic tank. Was that Jim or Jerry?
That's got to be Jerry.
Okay. Quote number 2. Did you see the movie Twister? I bet you Duke the Dumpster thinks he's in the ring with the world's largest tornado right now. Is that Jim or Jerry?
I feel like that's Jim, but this could be a trick question. They're both Jerry. I feel like that one's not mean.
It's not mean, but it is dumb. So
Yeah, which I mean, I love Jim Ross, but that doesn't mean he always said the
no, this is
smartest
Jim
thing.
Cornette or Jerry.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jim
because Jim
Cornette.
Cornette's on commentary. So
Oh, I thought you meant Jim Ross because we're so far ahead where Jim Ross has appeared. So now this changes the game that it's Jerry or Jim Cornette. So he called Yokozuna a septic tank.
yes.
That's got to be Jim Cornette now because they're in a rivalry with Yokozuna. That's got to be Jim Cornette. And so the Twister thing must be Jerry. Am I right?
You're fucking spot on. You're spot on.
Now,
The reason
now I got the context. Yes.
the reason I put these 2 quotes is because yeah, the septic tank thing is mean, but it really doesn't actually mean anything other than you're essentially saying this guy is shit, right? That's all you're saying. It's surface level mean, right?
And it's clever, so I should have known it wasn't Jerry.
Yeah, the next quote is so stupid. I was like, this is classic Jerry Lawler right here. Bringing up a reference that doesn't need to be brought up, making it not work completely. And oh my God, it was bad. So, anyways, that's our very first segment of Jim or Jerry. I don't know if we'll ever get a chance to do that again, but that was fun. The match itself is fine. It got a C for me, but I just don't, like you said, I don't know what's going on with Vader. They're setting up, I think, In Your House is in 2 weeks, I think is when we're at the next one or something like that. I don't really know what we're doing. Also, I don't remember this rivalry with Yokozuna going too much further than that pay-per-view. So it's going to be, I don't know, it's very confusing. Vader to me really should be the big monster heel, and they're just not pulling that off well at all right now.
Well, I think maybe the difference between you and I and maybe your average wrestling fan is that you and I really look at wrestling like a business. And the business is telling stories. That's what the business is. I mean, Triple H said that recently. He said, why have you been, he asked, why has WWE been so successful for all these years? And he said, because we tell stories. That's the business. And so when you see this, and I'm just thinking, what is the story here? That's bad for business. And I think that's how you and I both think about this. But what's good for business is that if WWF ever goes under, they can melt this gold casket down and sell it. Because up next, we got Paul Bearer and The Undertaker with the gold casket. If you recall, they introduced this gold casket last week. There's going to be a casket match between Undertaker and Goldust. And they bedazzled the casket for Goldust. Good guy Taker doing that. They say that Goldust loves the spotlight so much that they're going to put one on the casket after Taker puts him in it. And then Goldust and Marlena interrupt, and Goldust has a banger that I laughed out loud. He asked Undertaker, what is that scent? Embalming fluid number 5? That was good. Joseph, what'd you make of this one?
He also made a Tombstone reference, which I know is one of your favorite movies. It's a great film. And yeah, this is a good segment overall. I will say it's a little clunky. It's not my favorite, but Taker also isn't really perfect yet at kind of developing the Taker character. He really does lean very heavily still on Paul Bearer. It shows a little bit in this. Like he's kind of struggling to make it work. I think he's really good in recorded segments. I think that's when, which I think is fine, by the way. Like if a person's not great at a live mic, definitely give them recorded segments so at least the character can still work well. But then Mankind shows up and beats the hell out of Taker and hits him with a mandible claw. Who is Taker feuding with? He's feuding with both men at the same time. I mean, I don't really know what's going on here. Again, it feels like they had to pivot drastically with Goldust because Goldust was feuding with Warrior, and then that really never got resolved. And Warrior doesn't seem to be showing up at all, so they just kind of had to pivot. Marlena, as the quote unquote director, never directs, which is one thing I will say I don't like about the Marlena character. I think the image and the mystique of her is very cool, but I would like if you're the quote unquote director, you should be doing something to make that work, right? And then there's the moment where Goldust is actually laying down next to a knocked out Taker and kind of taunting him and stuff. And then Taker does the sit up spot. And we've talked about the Taker sit up before. And sometimes during matches, he's doing it every single moment, which really, I think, devalues it. This is one of the most effective ways to do it when you don't expect it to happen is when it happens, right? They have beaten the hell out of Taker. He should be knocked out. Goldust is gloating. That's when it happens. And Goldust is right next to him. So Goldust immediately runs out of the ring and just hightails it. That works really well. So this kind of had ups and downs. I gave it a B. I would have loved to have graded it higher, but it is a little clunky in the beginning, but it gets really good by the end.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It did have a lot of ups and downs, but you know who has a lot of downs?
Who's that, Scott?
Aldo Montoya. Because that poor boy is on a downward spiral. He's up next against Justin Bradshaw versus Aldo Montoya. Aldo gets squashed, and I like Aldo. So poor Aldo. But of note, because there isn't really much to note about this match beyond that they're clearly pushing Bradshaw and Aldo gets squashed, is that Vince plugs a house show at Madison Square Garden, and I'm sure nothing earth-shattering happens at that house show at Madison Square Garden. Joseph, what'd you think about all this?
The match is very simple. I gave it a C. I don't recall Bradshaw in his career using sentons, but I honestly really focus on Bradshaw's career when he became JBL. So I could be wrong in that, but it was interesting to see him do that in this match. It was a fine match. It was very straightforward, pretty typical TV match. It is unfortunate because Aldo Montoya has no way of winning. I don't think he really ever has a WWF career. I mean, he's been in WWF a few times as different characters. He'll go to ECW, I believe, after this and become Just Incredible. And that works really well. And he has a very good career in ECW. And I think when they do the merger, he comes along with that. I think. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But again, it's not a very long career in WWF at that point, and then he just kind of becomes an indie guy, and that's kind of sucks for him because he is talented in the ring, and he just never really becomes a guy. And unfortunately, like all professions, they're littered with that. So it is what it is. Justin Hawk Bradshaw wins the match, and they do the spot where I can't remember this, brandish him, and they do that. And I love that.
You like the
I
branding.
do. I love that spot. Is it cheesy? Absolutely. Let me be very clear. I understand it's the most ridiculous, cheesy thing. I love it because of that. I don't know if I would have recommended that in these, but it is fun to watch. It really would have worked in the 80s for sure. In the 80s, it would have been like, oh, that's perfect. Doesn't quite work as well, but I enjoy it. It always gets a pop for me. I think it's funny. And the match just kind of ends. It's a very quick match, and we move on to the next segment.
And the next segment is Vince telling us about the tour of Kuwait WWF did to entertain the troops. USA, USA, USA. Joseph, I wrote a little poem for this, and I'd like to recite it for you here now.
This
Freedom.
hold on. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and I love it, and I can't wait for it. Go ahead, Scott. The floor is yours.
Here it is. Here it is. Freedom rang from sea to sea until the British Bulldog tried to dump Shawn Michaels into Kuwait Harbor like a bag of tea. Hey, buddy, that's our thing.
That was horrible.
You don't know talent. You don't know shit about it. You don't know shit about poetry. In high school, I was in poetry class, and she wanted to submit my poems, and I said, "Nah, that's all right. I don't want to get made fun of." But yeah,
I
so here I
I
am pouring my heart out and getting made fun of.
I love it. I love it.
High school trauma coming rushing back. That was good though. You liked it.
No, I
Whatever.
did.
Anything about the promo? You like anything about the promo? Any comments about the promo?
Is this the one where like Shawn Michaels is tearing up? There's one of them where Shawn Michaels is tearing up, and I thought that was I don't know. The problem is I don't know if Shawn Michaels knows how to cry. Like I don't know if that's like a thing where he knows how to just kind of knee jerk reaction, because there's moments where that dude actually does cry when he's bringing up like what appears to be on the surface really, traumatic things, but could also be just him bullshitting at the time because it is Shawn Michaels in this era. It's fine. I think Ahmed Johnson talks about how emotional this is too, and then he wipes away a tear from his eye, but there is no tear in his eye, and that made me laugh a lot because it's like, bro, like look, Ahmed Johnson's not a great actor, but if you're not crying, just don't cry. Just talk about what it is and then move on. But pretending to wipe away a tear that clearly isn't there made me laugh.
He was misting up, okay?
Would you say he's pretty damn far from okay?
I mean, he was. He was very emotional. Very emotional. After that, we got our main event, Joseph. And this kind of makes up for the rest of Raw. We got Shawn Michaels. We got Hunter Hearst Helmsley. This thing is 20 minutes long. It's a great match. I think this is the first time these two dudes have gone at it. And so you're watching history in the making right here, ladies and gentlemen. Shawn and Hunter go back and forth. Shawn takes a minute to go out and check on Hunter's latest lady, which I don't know if that's great optically, considering that, Shawn's trying to dodge these charges that he's messing around with wrestlers' ladies. I don't know if he should be doing this. I don't think that looks good. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, comes out to watch the match. Who's he watching for? Drama. It's a slobber knocker. And this Hunter guy is going to have a bright future. I can't think of anything that will derail his path to stardom. What did you think about this match, Joseph?
So my first note was that both men have great chemistry, and they'll probably never square off again.
Oof.
It'll never happen.
Never.
That being said, Hunter lets Shawn act goofy, and that elevates both performances. We've mentioned Goofy Lex. That's kind of a specific character. Shawn really does a great job in his wrestling matches of hamming it up, especially with audiences, with his opponents. He'll do that for years. He's been doing it for years. He'll do it for the rest of his career. When things aren't specifically, he has to win the match, like they're not super high stakes, he will ham it up, and it really elevates the performance. And Hunter lets him do it. Hunter is really good at his pacing already in his very young career. He's really good at letting you do your thing because he knows your thing is going to help him do his thing, right? Hunter is a snob. That's his character. So Shawn being goofy can only help you get riled up in your performance about how this person's not taking you seriously, but they should be because you believe that you're an upper class and that they're lower class. That works really, really well. I think you said it was a 20-minute match. One of my notes is it's a surprisingly lengthy match. Even more surprising than just the length of this match is that this entire show is more about matches than it is promos, which I actually thought was really a good way of doing things. Speaking of promos, though, after this match, Shawn wins the match, as he should. He's the champion. It'd be crazy if he lost this match. Davey Boy Smith gives an impassioned promo about how he's going to beat up Shawn if he sees him next week. And in this 2-minute promo, it's a very quick promo because, like you said, there was 20 minutes for the match. They don't have a lot of time before the end of the show. It's about a 2-minute promo. So Davey Boy Smith is giving this promo. Diana Girl Smith is just staring at him open mouth the whole time. Why is she there?
Hold on. Did you say Diana
I
Girlsmith?
did.
That's cinema, bro. That's cinema. Please go on.
But why is she there? There's no reason for it. She's literally just gaping,
Because
staring at.
Sean is a home wrecker. He's a home wrecker.
But I feel bad for her. It just feels like she doesn't wanna be there, and she doesn't really know how to add to this, and it's unfortunate. Like, I don't wanna pick on her because I don't think it's her fault. I think she's getting put in a situation that has nothing to do with her. She's from a wrestling family, doesn't make her a wrestler, and that's okay. And but, like, Vince loves her, always wants her on screen, and she does this thing where she's just the whole time during this promo, like, literally staring in the back of Davey Boy Smith's head, just mouth open, and it's like, "Bro, for 2 minutes, you didn't react once. What is going on?" So, interesting close to the show. Match great, promo kinda, eh.
Yeah, she clearly doesn't. She's clearly uncomfortable. She clearly doesn't know what to do. And it's very evident, and it will continue to be evident as we go on. This overstays its welcome for quite a while, this storyline. But Joseph, who won the night?
Well, before we get into that, I do have one more note on
Oh my
the end of
goodness.
this Raw, which is it's
Okay.
really important when we go forward into the next week and forward really the next 5 months for WWF programming. If you look at where Hunter Hearst Helmsley is on this card, he's in the main event. He's not just in the main event, but he's in the main event with the top guy in the company. This is your number one guy and one of your up and coming heels, and you're putting them in a match, and they absolutely tear down the house. They do a great job. WWF clearly sees potential in Helmsley and has methodically begun to elevate him into the upper mid card, almost into the upper card. That's intentional. This is an intentional move, what they're doing. However, an event will happen between this Raw and next Raw that will change this trajectory drastically. But you're going to have to tune in next week to find out about that.
What a cliffhanger. What could it be? Because I certainly haven't given very strong hints about what it is.
Couldn't tell you.
I guess we'll have to find out.
But between the two shows, because you mentioned, which one do I think won? I did like Raw a lot. I think I'm going to give it to WCW, though, because at least storyline wise, there's a lot more going on. And all the matches were solid on that show. This show had some, it started off really poorly, I think, and then kind of picked up by the end.
Can I say something?
Scott, you can say whatever you'd like, sir.
What I'm going to say is you're absolutely right. The Sean Hunter match made up for a lot on Raw this week, but I think overall WCW had the better product from start to finish. We started with Lex camped out. We ended with the choke slam through the VIP table. We had good matches in between with the Steiner brothers and Public Enemy. Public Enemy put on a pretty good match, which, you and I both are not huge fans of them. I thought it was a good match with the Steiners. I mean, I guess maybe the Steiners make everybody look good. Chris Benoit, we had Ric Flair. We had everything. I think they won. But Joseph, the important thing here is, what did the fans think and why are they wrong?
So not much of of hiding what the outcome is here. Raw got a 3.5 in their Nielsen.
And the WCW got a 2.3, which is up from the horrible 1.9 they got last week. Still, Raw is crushing it right now. It seems like they're on a tear that will never stop.
Like, for how long, though?
Or will it? Or will it? Tune in next week and we'll see if that holds true. As always, I am Scott. With me is Joseph. Thank you so much for listening to the Monday Night Wars podcast.
Bye, guys. Hey, everybody, it's Joseph. And guess what? Not only can you listen to us every Monday on Spotify, but you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and YouTube Podcasts as well. Just search for Monday Night Wars Podcast. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at MON Night Wars Pod, on Instagram at Monday Night Wars Podcast, or just email us at mnwpodcast@gmail.com. And finally, subscribe to our Patreon at Monday Night Wars Podcast. For $2 a month, you get every pay-per-view from WCW and WWF during this era, as well as additional content later on. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you here next time on the Monday Night Wars Podcast.
I accidentally stole after I do my notes, I delete all my other notes because there was a time once when I used to just have them all in this big old long thing, and I got confused one week and I started talking about some other episodes, and I'm just deleting them and starting over every time so I don't make that mistake again. But I still had May 6th, 1996 in here, and I was like, oh shit, did I get confused? But we're good.
That's okay.
So I'm gonna.
That's okay, because I just got a notification on my phone that Ben Phillips is playing Elden Ring when he swore to me he was going to be working on his backyard this week because it's finally a lovely week. So I'm going to give him a disparaging message and say, "You got time for Elden Ring, but you ain't got time for Psych."
I know you know that he's not telling the truth.
Also, I really don't give a shit, but I'm just going to give him crap for it.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. All right. We'll pause. You send your hateful, spiteful message, and then we'll get back to it.
All right.